Poor old Harry Maguire. The waistcoat of 2018. We all thought it was cool, didn't we, for a couple of weeks in the summer of 2018. Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's time for another 5 Jokes About, which is a new series where I take a footballing subject and write 5 jokes about it, and then talk about that subject and drop the jokes in. This video is about England and Gareth Southgate. Let's get into it. Right, before we start, yes, I'm aware of the hair. My hairdresser has broken his wrist, so he's out of action for a bit. Get well soon, Luke. And he's the only person I trust to cut my hair. So I've had to grow it out for a little bit. And I was trying a bit of a 90s thing. I'm aware that it hasn't really, it's up for debate whether it's worked or not. But anyway, before we do start, please do drop a like on the video. If you're enjoying this series, 5 Jokes About, subscribe if you're new here as well. It'd be great to have you on board. Hit the bell so you get notifications about all my videos, and comment below with the next thing I should do 5 jokes about. Speaking of which, let's get on with joke number 1. And to do that, I'm going to head on over to my comedy club that I have here in my office. Before becoming England manager, the thing Gareth Southgate was most known for was missing a pen. Last time I was involved in a missing pen, I was sacked from my job for stealing office supplies. England, Southgate, 3-3 draw with Germany tonight, the final game before heading off to the World Cup in Qatar. Still feels weird saying that. And a very interesting game indeed. England 2-0 down, then 3-2 up, then 3-3. Very exciting game. If all the games at the World Cup are like that, then it could be quite exciting. So going into the game, all the talk was about Gareth Southgate. Should he be sacked as England manager with England's recent run, defeat against Italy in the last game of Nations League relegation? Hasn't been a fun time for Gareth at all. Started off so well with the World Cup in 2018, then even better with the Euros. But the last couple of years have not been great. Well, the last year, I guess, because the Euros was 2021, wasn't it? Which is confusing. Hasn't been great for Southgate at all. And they do go into this World Cup not in the best preparation. I have to admit, to be honest, when Southgate got the job, I liked Southgate. I think he's a nice guy, likable guy. Hasn't got a huge managerial pedigree behind him. I think people most remember him for being Middlesbrough manager. But I think was very much seen as someone who got on with the suits at the FA. Doesn't ruffle any feathers, nice bloke. Even when he's getting angry, you don't really know he's getting angry because he's just such a nice guy. Former Palace player as well. Obviously, I'm a Palace fan, and he was a very, very good player for us, captain as well. So, I liked Gareth, and I wanted him to do well as England manager, as I'm sure most of us did. So that was my initial thoughts. Going into Southgate getting the job initially, and he has done well as England manager. He hasn't done badly. You think about the things he has done, but I can understand why a lot of people maybe weren't. He's had to work really hard, I think, to win people over, because he probably wouldn't have been many people's first choice. He was seen as a yes man to the FA suits. He wasn't a sexy choice as manager. I'm not sure anyone has ever described Gareth Southgate as sexy, including his wife probably. But I think he's quite reliable, when you think about the managers beforehand, the whole Sam Allardyce thing that happened before Southgate got the job, and I think the FA probably thought, we got to make sure that we got someone we can rely on that isn't going to, do what Allardyce did. So I can see why he got the job, but I can understand why a lot of England fans maybe weren't too excited about him being England manager, and maybe haven't, even over the course of the last 5 years, haven't been that excited by him 6 years as being England manager. And he does feel like he's had to work really hard to win people round. I've always liked him. Maybe it's the Palace bias and the Palace connection. I always thought he was quite a nice guy and likable guy. Whether that translates to being a good manager, is a fair question. And we'll get onto that more in the rest of the video. But I have to admit, I've always had a soft spot for Gareth Southgate. Before we crack on, let's have joke 2. Harry Maguire. That's the joke. That's it. Poor old Harry Maguire. We'll come on to him later on. More on him, as you'd expect. Let's just go really quickly through the things that Southgate has done well for England. World Cup 2018, I think, it was a great summer, wasn't it? I think after the sort of the Euros in 2016 and just previous disappointments with England in tournaments over the years before that, I think it was so refreshing to see this young, exciting team do well in this tournament. And Southgate, for whatever you thought of him, was the reason that they did so well. And he led that team out there really, and it was a new, fresh England team, and it was just moulded in Southgate's, as a Southgate team. So I think he has to take a lot of credit for that. I mean, there were criticisms about, the semi-final against Croatia. Could they have won it? Should they have won it? Yes, maybe. Criticisms over the way that he sets up his team and did do in that tournament, specifically the semi-final and the playoff, and how he does in general. And yeah, I think I can understand why people get a bit frustrated with him. Negative approach potentially sometimes. I guess you have to weigh up with players at his disposal versus systems you play, and this is not a tactical in-depth channel. There are other channels where they'll get into why managers play a certain way. Is it players in the system? Is it a system to fit the players? Do the players come first? Does the system come first? And I think when you're England manager, not only are you already second in line behind club managers and what they want a lot of the time, and going back in the day when club managers would ask England managers not to pick their players or not to play them for full 90s and stuff. You're then at the mercy of who's injured and who isn't injured, and club form comes into it, something which is out of your hands as well. So I don't think it's an easy job being England manager, but I think he's done fairly well. Semis in 2018, which was the first time in a long time. The final in 2020/2021, and England were really a kick away from winning that. And again, that's not really his fault in terms of, I guess maybe he picks the penalty takers, but really at that point, again, we all know it's the 5 or 6 players that offer to take the penalty. So that was very unfortunate indeed. Some people said it was negative in the final. You can kind of understand why, but I admit that might be something people get frustrated with. But come on, I mean, his record's been pretty good so far. Yes, this year has not been good. The 4-0 reverse to Hungary, not good at all. Nations League's been terrible. But really, when you put up his record against previous England managers, Roy Hodgson, who I loved, he's done much better than Hodgson. Probably even better than Sven-Göran Eriksson, who, when I was growing up, that was supposed to be the golden era of England players and England team. And actually, I think Southgate's done better than that. So, his record speaks for itself, really. But I do think going into this World Cup, it's make or break for him. I think contract's up next summer. Well, no, in 2 years' time. But I think if they do bad in this World Cup, we'll come on to the sacking thing later. We'll come on to it later on. Let's come on to joke number 3. In his time as England manager, Gareth Southgate has overseen a team that's been relegated, that hadn't scored from open play in over 500 minutes. But the thing that's been most embarrassing about his spell is probably that waistcoat. Yeah, that waistcoat, the waistcoat of 2018. We all thought it was cool, didn't we? For a couple of weeks in the summer of 2018. I even went on the Yahoo show wearing a waistcoat, but that was more in character as a Southgate. But no, looking back, maybe it was a 2018 thing. We've come on a long way since then. Fashion changes very quickly, doesn't it? Let's look at some of the things that annoy people. We've gone over style of play, haven't we, before? And I think that's maybe a fair criticism, although, again, I think there's lots of factors in that. Picking of players, I think people get really, really annoyed by that. Even recently, Trent Alexander-Arnold not playing, and a lot of people are annoyed by that. Although I do think Reece James was quite good tonight against Germany, but certainly hasn't been in the best form for club or country. So I can understand why people would be annoyed by that. You look at someone like James Maddison. Now, he's having a fantastic season for Leicester, who are terrible, by the way, but he is a shining light in their team. And I know sometimes some things Southgate says in the press can wind people up. When he came out recently, I think it was this week, and said that Germany create a lot of playmakers through their academy systems, but England don't really do that. That isn't something we do. We don't have those kind of players. And then Leicester fans were like, have you seen James Maddison this season? He's been fantastic. And last season, was one of the most creative playmakers in the Premier League. So I think Southgate got that wrong, really. And it may be in a case of, getting his words out wrong. But Maddison really deserves to be in that England team at the moment, and certainly doesn't deserve to be overlooked in terms of a lack of playmakers in England, because that's not true at all. But I know that sometimes things he can say in the press do wind people up. I mean, he talked when he got the job in 2017, 2016 about only picking players on form. I wouldn't do reputational picks. It's only about players on form, and the big names and the reputation doesn't come into Southgate's selection. And then if you look at some of the players tonight, Maguire, he's barely kicked a ball for Man United this season, and when he did last season, didn't do it very well. Luke Shaw, who's lost his place in the Man United team as well, both playing. And I think for a lot of fans, that people are starting to look at the sort of the hypocrisy of that sort of comment. I do understand from Southgate's point of view how these are players that he's relied on, particularly Maguire over the last 6 years, who has done very well for him. Maguire's been much better for England than he has been for Man United. But you can see from a fan's point of view, when you're talking about picking on form, and Maguire gets in, and there are other teams, other players at the moment who don't get in, maybe a different position, but Maddison, as we talked about, Ivan Toney, who's been brilliant for Brentford, doesn't get a look in. And really, we knew, didn't we, even going into the Italy game, that Nations League was over for England. They were probably getting relegated. So why not give those guys a bit more of a go? Mark Gahey at Palace, who has been brilliant for us. Played in the 4-0 against Hungary, wasn't really at fault for any goals, and hasn't had a look in since. Probably deserved it more over Maguire. And then tonight against Germany, Maguire was at fault for 2 goals. Gave away the ball and then gave away a penalty for the first one, and lost the ball upfield for the second goal. That's a great strike from Havertz. So I can see why people get wound up by that from Southgate. I think sometimes it doesn't help himself in that regard. I will say, and I meant to say this a bit earlier on about Southgate, one of the things I loved about him, and I think that the Euros last summer showed how far England have come in terms of a sort of moral approach to football. The way he talked about his team as young men, I thought was excellent, and you could see the England team love playing for him. That group was so special. And then even in the final and the racism that came out after that online, which was appalling, the way that Southgate conducted himself and spoke about that and didn't shy away from it, spoke about how disappointed he was and how for him that's not England or English values. And actually the way the players came out and talked about it then online and in interviews showed a real level of maturity that I think is influenced by Southgate as well. So I know his words can annoy people, but I think in terms of being a sort of moral leader, I think he's brought this England team on leaps and bounds in that way. Right, joke 4. Gareth Southgate's team selections, they're a mess, aren't they? Jude Bellingham, picked on form. Luke Shaw, picked on reputation. And Harry Maguire, picked on by everyone on Twitter. Right, okay, so we come to the big question. The question that was in the thumbnail. Should Southgate be sacked? A lot of people, certainly after the Italy game, were saying that he should have been sacked before the World Cup. I don't believe that's something the FA will do. I think they have a lot of faith in him, and I don't think it's worth it really in the lead up to a World Cup. Today was their last game before going to Qatar. I think of the preparation going into that tournament. It would be a mess. It'd be a shambles. I think you might as well stick with him. I think he's proven tonight he can get something out of this team. They did look really exciting later on. Have to hand it to him. The subs, Saka and Mount, did very well when they came on, and that was certainly Southgate's choices there. So I think tonight showed there is something still in Southgate, something in this team. I have to admit, if he has a disappointing World Cup, and for me, really, when you look at last couple of tournaments, disappointing means probably not semi-finals, and that probably might be something people were saying anyway with England in previous tournaments. But I think the progress they've made in their last 2 tournaments, I think semi-finals has to be bare minimum. And if England don't get to there, then I think it's probably fair to say goodbye to Southgate. And I think he will have. He said that in the press, didn't he? That he knows that having a contract till 2024 doesn't mean anything if they have a bad World Cup. So we'll see what happens. I think if he goes, he's probably left England, the national team, in a better place. But I think it will be tinged with disappointment that this team probably could have done better, probably could have made the final in 2018, and probably should have won it in 2021. But there you go. So I don't think he'd be sacked for now. But talk to me after the World Cup, and we'll do more of these videos in the World Cup as well. Let's do a final joke 5. Well, 3-3 with Germany. This game had everything, didn't it? All it was missing, really, was a guy sticking a flare up his bum. And it would have been complete. I remember that guy. What a summer that was. Anyway, hope you enjoyed my video. 5 jokes about this video. It was Southgate and England. If you did, drop a like on the video, please. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here for more football fun, a lot of shorts, comedy shorts, some songs, videos like this. And comment below. Do you think Southgate should be sacked now, after the World Cup, if they have a bad World Cup? What do you think? And again, as I'm saying with all these videos, give me a subject to do on my next video. Let me know what you want to hear 5 jokes about. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching, and see you again soon.